Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the October 4th, 2016 Selectmen's Meeting for Town of Southampton. To my left is Jackie Sears. To my right, John Martin. We'll begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're open time to the public. Seeing none, we're moving on to town reports.
Might as well go first.
Just change the rules every time I ask it.
I know, but no one else is here to do their updates yet,
Okay.
other than Mike. He is here. Okay, so just a couple things for October 2016. Running through briefly. Procurement. HVAC for the library system, bids are due the 11th, which is next Tuesday at 2 p.m., so we're excited to see what comes in for those. Conan Park Pavilion Roof, I'm still waiting. Saw Mark Reed today and asked him to work on getting me specs. He's waiting on the building commissioner, who's on a cruise, so he is not able to assist this week. Hopefully not the same cruise Jim's on in Hurricane Matthew.
Well, Jim's not coming back at the rate this is going.
Oh, no. Okay, so the Whittemore Bridge, we're still on hold with that one. We need to work with Easthampton further. School capital projects, we've got one done at this point, or at least on our side, which was the projectors that we had voted on at town meeting. Two of the projects that are still outstanding. One is the laptops for the teachers. We've been back and forth with emails today. We're waiting on understanding of what Apple's actual price is under the state contract and how it actually compares to the quote they gave us. And the doors, they're having the security pieces of the doors installed by IRS down the street, and for them to do it, because it's work on a building, Chapter 149 applies, and prevailing wages, and we've gone back and forth, but I'm waiting for the fourth piece at this point, so we can actually move forward. Community compact cabinet grants, just is the same updates. Human resource piece, we're working on it. I'm getting a little bit behind on actually updating the job descriptions electronically. When I put them into my computer, my desktop, it crashes Word every time. So I have to do them on the laptop, which takes a little bit longer. So please bear with me. I will try to catch up this week. The other piece is the government structure and charter. We are working with Bernie Lynch on this piece, and I'm waiting to hear back from him on a date that he thinks he will be able to present to the select board. Either end of October, 1st of November is what we're looking at. Let's see what else we have here. Ongoing projects that are still on the docket. The collective bargaining agreement for the police, we need to put them back on executive session on one of the upcoming meetings, once we clarify with them where we are in outstanding pieces, so we can wrap that one up. We're still waiting on a signed dispatch collective bargaining agreement. We have the MOU that's been signed. I've typed up the finalized version. I'm just waiting. We'll see where that piece goes. Greenway, we're still in progress. That is in capitals, in progress, and may be there for a little while, but please bear with us. Green communities, at this point, I spoke to the consultant this morning who is working off of Eversource. He is doing one more walkthrough at the school, one more walkthrough here, just to update all of his figures and update the plan. Once we get that information, we get it back to the UMass Extension. We need to get them a few more items on the fuel piece, and then we'll be good to roll with moving forward with the 20% reduction plan. And then we'll have everything we need to do our application for Green Communities designation this fall. So we're trying to get this done. The consultant is aware that I am departing at the end of November, so we're trying to get his piece hopefully done next week so we can get everything moving forward. Payroll sheets, Donna will chat about those in a little bit. Code Red, dispatchers, I still need to meet with Jeremy over at the police station. He's been in and out, so hopefully now that he's in this week, we'll be able to get him trained on Code Red. So that will be up and running. Otherwise, just a really brief overview. I had provided Charlie last week with a list of projects that I'm trying to work on before I depart, so just so folks at home know what I'm working on the next couple weeks. Green Communities designation application, HVAC at the library, Selectmen Town Administrator budget request for FY18, annual renewal applications. We are pretty much finished with updating the contracts. We have a cabinet in the office, all the contracts we have in town that we know of. We've gone through, we filed them, and Velda has done a great job of putting together an Excel sheet with all the information, what they pertain to, when they expire, renewal terms, and all of that data. At some point, once we review it one more time this week or next, we'll send it out to all departments. Anyone who has a contract that we don't know about, we need to be in touch, and the same thing with Vicky's office as well. And the hope is that once we finish compiling this piece, that it will help moving forward and everyone will have an understanding of what's out there for contracts. Be able to keep it updated. Once we get it finished, we're also going to try to scan each of these files into the server, or the town server, so that we have them townwide. Let's see what else we have here. Special town meeting, the motions is what I'm now focusing on at this point for October 18th. Concom has asked me to look at doing a hold harmless agreement, so we have some templates, and a little bit we might have to work with town council to approve, finalize, but they want to do some work on some of their conservation land, cleaning up brush and so forth, that they'd like to utilize that for. I already went through the 2 community compact cabinet grants that I'm trying to wrap up, and the last thing I will work on is the annual town report for 2016 for the town administrator. Thoughts, comments, questions?
Fire department hold harmless on a fire practice they wanted to do. What's the status of that?
It's in my file. I will move it up tomorrow.
Have we heard anything relative to the asbestos?
I haven't followed up on that one yet.
All right,
I will do so tomorrow. That's it? All good? Excellent.
thank you. Okay, selectmen's liaisons. Jackie, anything?
Okay, I haven't heard from Nilda Cohen.
Microphone?
Oh, pardon me. I haven't heard from Nilda Cohen and the zoning board, but I would announce again, the Community Preservation Committee is calling all town project proposals on October 26th at 7 p.m. They're asking the public to join them for ideas or projects for 2017. That would be open space, historic preservation, community housing, and outdoor recreation. If you have any ideas and you want some projects, the Community Preservation Committee has some funding to make them possible.
Okay, just to follow up with that, I'm working with the ECAD television to put together a video for the cable network on what community preservation's been doing over the last few years. You'll be seeing that soon enough.
Met with the Finance Committee last night. Mike, are you going to give an update on what went on last night? Okay, so I'll just leave it to Mike to give the update.
Sure. Okay, the only update I have is with the Highway Department, and we're meeting with Mass DOT Friday to discuss options relative to the East Street Bridge. And that's about it at my end. Very good. Reports, department, boards, committees. Michael?
Good evening. Michael Rosenberg, 144 East Street, Chair of the Finance Committee. So we did meet last night to review the town meeting warrants. And I have them in this stack of paper. Thought I did. Hold on one second.
You want a copy, Mike?
No, I have mine with notes, I just... left it right there. So we met last night, obviously we go over our normal agenda items. We went over PCFs, PRFs, budget requests, revenue and expense reports. So as I had mentioned last week, the revenue and expense reports have empty spots. They haven't been filled out fully, so it is tough to get a good view of the revenue and expense balance sheet status of the town for the first quarter, which is, it's very tough, especially when you're putting forward proposals to allocate money from one fund to another, and we can't even see the balance of the fund we'd like to take funds out of.
Yeah, if I can interject, Heather, last night, town accountant came in, we asked her why we couldn't get the numbers from last year and project going into this year, and she says, there she is, the treasurer had some information still pending that she was waiting for?
Donna will be in a few minutes if you want to ask more specifically.
Okay. Hi.
So that was one of the items. Like usual, we go through at this point, it was mostly the expense items, and there were a couple outliers, which may be sort of input errors, but all in all, I don't think there was anything too out of whack. We did have a couple questions for Vicky, which we'll follow up with after. And we also went over the warrants. John was present, which was very helpful. So as a group, we recommended and did not recommend certain articles in here. We have not made decisions on all of them. We still have some backup information we'll be getting, and then we'll have a meeting prior to the town meeting to vote on our recommendation. One thing we did stick with from a policy standpoint is not recommending articles that go against the 2014 DLS report. If you're taking funds from a stabilization account and using it to backfill your budget shortfalls, it's something they don't recommend. And we did kind of take a very consistent stance on that. There were a lot of things in here that we saw as, we didn't even understand how they happened, to be honest. You know, we bought a new police cruiser last year, and we have a bill to pay for the accessories this year. It just didn't quite make sense, because I think we purchased the cruiser in November, and all of a sudden we're paying it out of a stabilization fund. And from what I remember, there were funds left over in the capital fund for the purchase at the end of the year, which could have been used for those accessories. And, you know, the police department did also spend down their expense budget on other items, so now we're taking money which should be saved or going to sort of one-time capital purchases and using it to pay for something we had funds to pay for last year. So granted, anything left over gets rolled in and gets separated into those accounts, but, you know, you're mixing all the town accounts, so you're taking a little bit from each group when you do those things.
Do you want some responses on some of those?
I did talk to Heather. Seemed like a mix-up in billing, but it's,
That one, that's my understanding.
you know, if,
So what
On the MHQ side, correct? Yeah.
but if we knew we didn't pay them, we can't just assume we don't have to pay them for something, right? I mean, that's my understanding, is we knew we didn't pay them, they said we paid them, and we chose not to pay them. You're just leaving yourself open for a future financial hit there, especially if you know that, and then you have the funds to cover that cost at that moment. The right thing to do is to find someone and pay the bill, I would think, right?
I agree, but my understanding is that they said we did know them, and we said we didn't, you know, you're not going to pay a bill that you don't have. Right. Yeah.
Okay. In regards to some of the salary increases, it does fall in line with our policy with the 2014 report of not funding, you know, continuous items or creating new budget items. One of the items that came up in discussion when it came to some of the salary increases was backup. You know, we see the warrant, and maybe there'll be more information at the town meeting, but people may have questions about why such an increase. Are there numbers and facts and figures behind it to support it? Because I could tell you I need to raise where I work, but unless I provide you some sort of documentation or there's some proof there, it's just me telling you I need more money. So that's something that came up, because we fully expect people to have questions about that. I mean, some of these are substantial, and questions may come up, well, what is the increased workload? And you know, it's good to have
One of them
backup.
was to do with the building inspector, where we're recommending paying him for 40 hours since he's working that, and building permits have gone down the last 2 years. So I think we're going to get some questions on why is he working 40 hours if the building permits have gone down. But there's a lot more involved with the job, of course. So I think we need to be ready with some information, or he needs to be ready with the information at the town meeting.
Let's see here. Article 12, for instance, the select board consultant line, we didn't have enough money in that, in the budget period to actually budget for that. So taking reserve funds to create a new line item and budget it is not, it's not good fiscal policy. We should fund it through the normal procedures and not use leftover money to fund something that will be continuously on the tax roll.
But we anticipate the use of that. We see that as a coming bill.
So we
So,
couldn't afford it 4 months ago.
so we still need this as a necessity. The select board pecks the priorities. This has become a priority.
And it's up to the voters, right? I mean, we recommend
just-
one way, you recommend another, we
Just
have
pointing
different
out the
feelings.
fact that, we've been criticized not using consultants relative to certain things we do.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, okay, we have to have a budget for that. And if you tell us, well, we can't afford it, we can't do it, then we get criticized for not bringing a professional in.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you, Mike. I don't disagree with what you're saying.
I mean, the 24, it all goes back to the 2014 DLS report, and if you haven't read it, I encourage you to read the entire thing, because, and I encourage, to be honest, the general public watching this to go on the website and read it, because there are a lot of things that we do here that go against what that report says, and I wasn't here in 2014, but from what I understand, the good choices we have made since then going forward were based off recommendations on that report. So going against some of those recommendations may end up in a place we don't want to be. It may bring us down a road where we don't want to be. So I think it's good to be mindful of those. A lot of these were, I mean, similar stance on all these, obviously paying prior year bills. We're understanding that some bills come in after the close, and we understand those, this $80 bill and some of the other ones. So. That was it for those. We will, like I said, meet again and kind of review everything. We have some other open questions on items that we'll try to get before the meeting.
Can your committee send an email to the select board as to what those questions are, so that the whole select board knows at the same time?
Yeah, so I'll send them around to everyone. A member was kind of tasked with that question, so they're searching out the answer and we'll report back, and I'll forward you the list.
Thank you.
Articles and related questions. Honestly, that was it. I've worked with Heather on some of the items I brought up last week, and I think she answered a lot of the questions earlier about the status of those, so I think we're good. Any questions for the Finance Committee? Requests, recommendations, charges, projects, anything? We are going to revisit the long-term financial plan. We have been looking at it. Obviously, things will, I'm sure, be in flux for a little bit, but we'll revisit that and try to do what we can to make modifications, send it around to departments for their input. It was originally sent around last year for some numbers. We never received it back, but we can revisit that and move along. And we will be meeting as a finance team next week to discuss status, kind of steps going forward, because obviously in 3 months we will be, town admin may be in limbo or a different situation. So just so we have a plan to be ready for the budget season as it comes. And one thing we had discussed was having the select board's support about having draft budgets sent in on time by the requested date. We definitely had some areas where budgets were sent in after a certain date, this year and last year. So your support on that and communication towards the departments about helping in this situation would be helpful.
It's going to be interesting with the interim town manager or administrator and the budget process, so we're going to have to stay on top of that.
Okay. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, town accountant?
All right, so
some things that are happening currently. Still working on trying to tie up year end. I'm working with the treasurer's office on some last receivables that we need to reconcile. I will hopefully by the end of this week have all the other funds carry forward balances in to the new year, because those are all balanced. And I am working on trying to automate my reports, my balance sheet reports that I send to the Department of Revenue. Past practice has been, which I think a lot of communities do this, they, I have about 15 different Excel spreadsheets, and they show balances from different funds in different ways, expenses, revenues, on the balance sheet, the receivables, and so you plug those all into those spreadsheets, and then I would send them to the Department of Revenue along with their checklist and the calculation of free cash. But when I met with my contact from the Department of Revenue, he had showed me a report that a few of his communities do use that comes from SoftRate. The whole point is that I need to actually link all those accounts together so they show up on that report. So I've been trying to do that periodically. I don't know if that whole report will be done for this end of year cycle, but definitely for next end of year cycle. There were some fields that when the accounts were set up, they weren't necessarily used correctly, so I have to go through and find all those fields, correct them, so that it pulls the right numbers into the right categories. But once that's done, that's pretty much all they'll need. They won't need all those 15 other spreadsheets. They'll just need those 2 different reports. And then the other piece would be Schedule A, which is the reporting mechanism that the Department of Revenue uses to compile all their data when they do the budget for the next budget cycle. And so it's very time consuming in terms of taking this report. Well, that's 17, so that's probably not as full. So you take 16s, people at home can't see this, and I have to highlight and add these, whatever, however many hundreds of accounts in specific categories. They're grants, they're federal grants, they're public safety federal grants, they're highway safety grants that are, so there's all those different categories, and that's how they all get logged. Beginning balance, pluses and minuses, ending balance, and they all have to tie back to your balance sheet. So if I can somehow work that report into SoftRate, it would make my life a lot easier. Not that I mind doing that report, because it's nice to see how things tie in different ways from the 3 reports that I use pretty much on a daily basis. But it would make it easier in terms of reviewing it and just looking for potential errors, or maybe things are logged in the wrong category, versus trying to just put it all in the worksheet that they have on the DLS website. So that's that piece. As Mike mentioned, I went over the expense report for 17, and there's a few things that kind of jumped out at us that we're going to look into to figure out why those balances seem more spent than they should be. And I will get back to them in terms of what those are. We have bills due tomorrow. There's a holiday on Monday, so we sent an email out saying that bills would be due tomorrow at 10. Because it takes Joyce that much, we don't have Monday to process everything, and if you need to be able to sign them on Tuesday, I don't have any extra money to pay her extra hours to be here till 4:30 doing all the bills. So we just ask that people, bring them in. People are good. And, obviously if stragglers come in Tuesday morning, Thursday afternoon, you get in the mail, we'll add those through. Spoke with the the fire chief, and him and I are going to come up with an ambulance receivables policy, which obviously we would, bring to your attention, and how what do we do with uncollectible ambulance receipts. I'm gathering, I made some calls today to some other communities to find out what they do. The police chief and the fire chief, is documenting what he knows of what other communities do, and we're going to come up with something. So You know, when you look at that list, you know that whatever that amount is, it's current and it's not, 4, 5, 10 years old that, used to be in the past. The other thing that I'm going to bring before you, but I have to create the policy/procedure is with debit card purchases. Joyce and I kind of talked through and went, created a form and what we needed people to fill out for us before the money got transferred to do the purchase. We're going to see how this form works to see if that's really what it is that we're going to need when we go to process those bills, because we don't want things falling through the crack. It's like when we give you the warrants, I have to approve those before the money gets released from the treasurer's office. So if you already released the money and you bought the purchase and you didn't come to me first, you did it backwards. And then if you don't bring the information to me that you actually got the money out, then I have no idea, and the money's already gone, like physically gone out of the bank. And so even if I reconcile that bank account with Donna, the money's gone. And so what if someone's, which, knock on wood, hopefully won't happen, but what if their budget line is already spent? I can't process that, but the money's like physically already gone from the town. So I'm trying to come up with, we're trying to work on what we've already kind of established in terms of what we need in order to process it. And the few people who have used the new form, it's working okay. So, but that's kind of on the table out there. I talked to the auditors today, and potentially the week of February 27th. Originally it was maybe the 20th, but that's school vacation and there's a holiday on Monday, so we would only be here like 2 days, because Tanya wouldn't, they work on Monday, but we don't. So we had talked about maybe the 27th of February, so she was going to see if that worked for you. For the FY16 audit, and she can't do that in like 2 days, so that's why we did that day. And then I am on a conference on November 3rd at Fort Devens. It's the annual fall meeting for the Mass Municipal Accountants and Auditors Association. And then just to, I guess, gives a little background to the whole MHQ bill. I noticed that we didn't have a bill. I contacted Mike, I contacted MHQ. You don't owe us anything. Mike called them, they don't owe us anything. I'm like, can you send us an invoice? We don't have any invoices for you. You don't owe us anything. I closed out the purchase order. So then because there was extra money left, so to speak, we transferred money for items that are in the current, the $55,000 or $56,000 that we asked for this year. It was in that number for the cameras and the laptop, which wasn't in the original $44,000 budget. So, when we had the $44,000 budget, it didn't include everything. And so we took, he was paying for those particular items that was needed for the cruiser out of his gift fund and out of his expenses. So we transferred some of that over because there was, a little bit of money left over. So there's still money left over in that to pay for part of this particular MHQ bill. But, when you call the company 2 separate people on 2 separate occasions, you don't owe us anything, you don't have any invoices outstanding, there's not much else I can do. I mean, if they can't send me a bill, I can't pay them. I can't just cut them a check and say, oh, here, we have an order, we got this equipment, we're going to send you the money. I don't have an invoice, I have nothing. So it kind of, Vicki,
we understand.
I know, I'm just explaining. They admitted that they kind of lost track of what happened. So, but just kind of give you that little bit of background.
Just to jump backwards for a second.
Yes.
Ambulance uncollectible, about how much money are we talking about?
I have to look at the report and go through it as of the end of June. It's tens of thousands of dollars, because it's very old.
I think it might be up near 80 or 90,000.
Yeah, it's very old.
But it goes back a long way.
To 10 years, maybe.
A lot of it is truly
10 years,
uncollectible.
It is, because some
So you-
people have
And
passed
it's
away.
never been written off.
So we haven't written anything off in the last 10 years, and that's why you're talking $80,000.
What used to happen was the third-party billing company would send us their balance,
Right.
and we would adjust our balance to what they had. And they still had those collective, that money on their bill as, you know, in their balances, us still owing them. And so, that obviously wasn't the right way to just,
No,
Balance.
you're just letting it float, and it's not,
correct.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I started looking at it, and then it kind of got pushed to the wayside, and so now the chief and I are going to start looking at it again, and I have the details to be able to go through that with him to, you
are
know.
these mostly residents of the town?
I'm not sure, I'd have to look at who they are.
Do we get an aging sheet of all this money, or is it just 80,000?
No, we get an aging sheet.
So the aging sheet goes out 10 years. So whose responsibility is it to keep track of that account?
Well, I have it on my books as receivables, but I was taught when I came here to balance to what,
We're
They
not
have.
trying to find fault.
yeah, I'm just
We're-
saying,
we're
so that's
trying
what
to-
we've,
Trying to
that's what we've
correct the
been
issue.
doing. And so, right now, we're gonna treat it similar to, like, water and personal property and real estate taxes. We're gonna have to book, I'll have to book a commitment to say, you know, this is what they billed out for us, then all the receipts that Donna has, I will have to put towards whatever that commitment is, and you should have that balance, and it should match to theirs.
But who's going to write off the old ones? Because obviously, we don't want to carry them on our books.
That would be, once I have those details, I will come to
Probably
you and say,
everybody
yes, go ahead and take them off. So they'll have to take them off the book, their books.
Because this isn't, obviously, 80,000 isn't a viable number. We need to know what that number is.
Yeah, this is
Correct.
just conversation.
Yeah.
The other question I have, and I don't have an answer for this, is if it's residents of the town, there may be a possibility of taking the outstanding balance and leaning the property.
And people are going
Yeah,
to say
that's
that's
a good
cruel, but,
question.
you know,
Well-
we need to do what we need to do if it's,
Part of the thing is with the billing company that's used, apparently, they only send out so many notices.
5, from my
And so
understanding.
once, you know, so after 5 months, or
okay. So at what point,
they send one every month.
They're forgotten.
If you don't pay it, then
Yeah.
they don't do it, that's as far as they go.
Well,
Yeah,
that-
even though they,
So
yeah,
there's no policy in place as to how we then handle, which, so nothing's been done
Okay.
as to how to pursue them after that.
so we need a policy. So let me ask you a question. They bill it out, and we turn it over to the collection agency at what point?
We don't have.
we don't have one.
So it's just a billing company sending out the 5 dunning letters?
Correct. They do get a percentage of what they collect.
Oh, sure.
So,
But so what percentage of billing do we collect on an annual basis?
I'm not,
What the total bills are. I mean, we never really see that.
Well,
side of it.
instead of getting too deep into this, can you ladies take and put together some kind of report for us so that we have a better idea of where we're going with this thing?
I guess the question, I got to follow up, because you said we don't know how much we bill because we don't get involved with it. So, no, I'm just going to, the next question is, who knows this? Is it the chief?
well, you know, the people at, the billing company, Coastal Billing, I want to say Lauren, but that's her name, that sends me the information. You know, she sends, if I can get her to send me the details, she usually always sends Donna the details, but I have to look through those reports. I don't know, I'm not familiar enough with those reports, those detailed reports. I get 3, you know, I'm supposed to get 3 different ones. One's an aging, I think one's a billing, and one might be an adjustment, because she has like 4 different columns. This is what we billed out, this is what we collected, this is what we adjusted. So I need to, you know, understand how their system works first, by looking at those different reports to find that out.
But do you get those reports, Donna?
I do, and I try to, you know, I have them, I forwarded them to Vicki, I try to do it when they come in, but, I think that, you know, the thing is, that there's adjustments every month based, just like, if the insurance company is billed first, or Medicare, whoever it is,
Yep.
right? So a lot of times, they pay a portion of it, there's a co-payment owed, you know, so a lot of times, it's just a co-payment that's not being collected. It depends on the amount of the bill, and, you know, it depends on a lot of different things. But then, like, if it's Medicare, or maybe even some insurances,
Yeah.
I don't know, then there's an adjustment made saying that this is how much we'll cover of this, that's allowed of this particular charge, and so they write off the difference.
I mean, there's customary and unusual, and then they write up. But the patient gets a explanation of benefits, an EOB, so the patient knows what their copay or
Right.
towards their deductible is. I guess the part I'm having a concern with is we don't know how much we're billed, and we don't know how much we're owed. And that could be substantial money, and we're fighting for this, thousands of dollars here and there. So I think we need a system in place, because you're saying you're getting them, you're saying you're giving them to Vicky, Vicky's saying she needs to get them, so I'm not sure.
Well, I really need to make a better effort. You know, this is something that had come up in our audit, and it's one of those ones where, oh yeah, I'll do it later, because it's such a big task. And so now I'm at that point when I'm like, okay, I really need to focus this summer, and I talked to the chief and said, you know, we really need to, like, make sure we do this. So I have to understand those reports first, and I, you know, need to make a few phone calls to a few other communities to see what their policies are in terms of what they do with their, you know, ambulance receivables list, because the majority of communities use coastal billing. There's one other company, I think, out there that uses it. So,
I got to tell you, though, if coastal billing is getting, I'm going to pick a number, 40% return on all the billing we got out there, and the rest of it's going by the wayside, we should analyze, would it be a good return on investment if we hire a part-time clerk that bills that and goes after it, then does the legal work after that?
Or turning it over to some sort of a collection agency.
Yeah.
If we lose some of it, is that going to be beneficial to us? These are the things that we need to look at. But, you know, this has been like this since, you know, 5 years since I've been here.
That's just,
You know what I mean? It's been,
but that's a scary part.
I think it was even before either one of us got here, so.
But again, it's, I mean, I'd like to see something in the next couple of weeks, an aging as well as the percentage that the company collects once they send out the bills. How much do we send them? What portion they collect? And, you know, because 5 letters, that's not a collection agency. Everybody knows who owes a bill.
But they're a billing company, they're not a collection agency.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And there's 5 dunning letters, and that's, everybody out there who doesn't pay bills knows that once that letter is here, they don't have to worry about it anymore, so they just throw them away. Unless there's some legal action tied to it.
well, one other thing that the auditors have recommended, I don't know if it's being done or not, is that the fire chief was supposed to be kind of reconciling with the billing company to make sure that all the calls that they actually went on are truly billed.
Absolutely.
You know, but really that has to be done in his office, and it doesn't take, you know, probably only takes a half an hour to just go through your list every month or whatever, but, and I don't know if
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah, I mean, as the chief, he should know how much is out the billing every month and what kind of collection. I mean, as a manager, to me, that would be important, that you're funding. So,
Can I get back to the same thing? Will these ladies be kind enough to give us a report in a couple of weeks as to what is actually happening with this whole thing?
yeah.
My conversation with him yesterday, I was under the impression that he was starting to do some of that pieces, but I don't know that for sure. I'd have to actually go over and see how they do it.
Yeah.
Some of it I can't see because it's all
I would-
related and whatnot,
I
but,
would like to put the charge on Vicky if we can. She can coordinate it if needed, but I think she's the right person to bring it back to us.
This is a motion?
I will make that as a motion. Sorry, Vicky.
that's okay.
That she come back to us in a couple of weeks, if that's enough time, to give us an aging, how much we bill out on an annual basis, and what percentage the billing company collects off of that. I think those are key figures.
3 weeks, got to be after town meeting.
That's fine.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so let me just make sure I write this down here. So you obviously want to receive an aging list, right?
Yeah.
How much we are collecting,
What percentage they're collecting from the billing that they do? And how much billing do we give them on an annual basis? Maybe go back 3-4 years if you can?
Yeah.
and, all right, so how much collection percentage of billing? What was the last thing? Sorry, I was writing.
How much we bill,
Oh, annual,
annual
okay.
billing, yeah. I mean, this may be, it may be nothing, but it may be a little gold mine that we're overlooking.
Well, I find it kind of deja vu. I was on the original committee that established the ambulance billing in town.
Your name's attached to everything.
Everything. You should check your deed.
Well, it's, I guess I wouldn't, it's a
But
gold
we-
mine in
But we
that
did this in-house back then.
it all reverts back to the ambulance department, you know, the EMS department, so.
That'd be scary.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So
but But it's not coming back to the general fund, I guess.
But also the collection agency.
I don't
how
think
much
it's gonna
they take.
happen.
We don't have a
Exactly.
collection agency.
No, but I mean, if we did have
The
one.
billing,
Oh, yeah, that's one of the things we want to look
I
at.
mean, that would be something that would be, based on some of this information, you know,
I mean, when we
is that
established,
something you want to do, is go after collection?
I think we
And
need
what's the
to know.
timeframe and, you know, all that, so.
Yeah,
when this was first established, I chaired that committee that established this. We actually had in-house someone that was sending out the bills, and we were acting as the collection agency back then. I'm talking years ago now. And the fire chief used to work with the bill collection clerk to take and do all this. And it worked well for a number of years, but then the town kept changing.
And growing.
And growing, and that's where that faded away.
Yes.
But the whole purpose of that was so that we could fund the ambulance service in town.
I'm ready for another topic if you are.
You all ready for another?
Yeah.
You all set?
I'm all set.
And I want to go back to last night, and since Donna's here, we were talking about closing year-end, and you said you were waiting for some information before we could close it from the treasurer.
Yeah, we had that discussion this morning. There's a few receivables that she's trying to search out, you know, I guess, balance herself before she gives it to me. I mean, as you know, there's a few people, new people entering items and whatnot, and so for her to try and go back, I'm sure she'll explain to you, but for her to try and go back to figure out what someone else did takes a little bit of time.
Do
So-
you think we're going to have closure on that? It affects looking at the budgets going forward, and we were also talking about the revenue for this year. I guess it's only in there for July and part of August?
The budgets for this year, you'll have the carry forwards. You know, once I did the bank reconciliations, I can,
Right.
and I reconciled between expense, revenue, and balance sheet, all those pieces, I can carry those forward, which I'm going to work on this week. The receivables piece relates to the balance sheets and getting the free cash certified and closing of the general fund. So the rest of it, I can, you know, work on the end of this week, but the
Okay.
general fund piece is those,
It's just going into
those two receivable pieces. I was.
budget season, we need some numbers.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, but we had that, you know, discussion this morning of
Okay.
what we kind of needed.
Any
so.
projection on the cherry sheet as to when we'll see free cash?
Probably November,
November?
I'm hoping.
I'm not holding you to it.
I'm
I'm
hoping.
just trying to
You know, if
figure
I
out.
submit that, all this to them, the end of the month, beginning of November, I don't know what their turnaround time is.
I'm going to digress. We were talking about closing out. Are we going to have that ready before town meeting?
October 18th?
Yeah,
No.
it's just
I
3.5
got a
months.
straight answer.
You will not have the books closed. You will have the balances in the stabilization funds and the ambulance funds and all that. You'll have that information. I just won't have any free cash numbers and all
Oh,
those
we're not
balance sheets done by
Yeah,
town meeting.
yeah, the free cash, yeah.
No, but carry forwards of all the other funds
Yeah.
besides the general fund, I'm stacking them up right now so I can enter all those
Okay, good,
as we speak, because you enter one, you have to enter it on 3 different things, so,
okay. Sounds good, thanks.
Thank you.
you're welcome.
You were doing so well over there, Donna.
I'd rather sit back there. So,
So who are you?
I'm Donna.
Surprisingly, people at home ask you, who is that person? It was the accountant, or it was the treasurer.
Donna
I mean, you
Whiteley,
know,
treasurer collector.
People that we know, yeah.
So a couple things. We recently sent out the first quarter 2017 water bills. And they are now available to be paid online, as are the real estate and personal property and motor vehicles. So in the first 8 days they were up, we got over $7,000 in payments online, so that's great.
Now, a question, I may have heard the answer. There's an additional fee on there, a meter fee or something, if I remember right?
Yeah, we've had the most questions about this meter fee. So when the water commissioners sent out their notice that the rates were going up back in June, we sent it with all the bills. The meter fee was listed on there as one of the fees, but a lot of people didn't see that, I guess. But I guess it's because the meters are coming to the end of their useful life, the majority of them, and so they end up having to be replaced. Some quicker than others.
So that's to replace them?
And they're expensive, like, I don't know, $350, $400 a piece. Don't hold me to that, but they're expensive. So this is a way to be getting money set aside to be replacing these meters rather than charging it to an individual resident when their meter, doesn't work anymore and has to be replaced.
Was this going to be an
you know.
ongoing fee?
I believe, yes, it's going to be a quarterly ongoing fee.
Extra $32 a year? $8 a fee as well?
Yes. So really, the base bill went from 42 to 58,
Right.
not from 42 to 50,
Yeah.
because of the meter fee. I received a call this afternoon that one of the properties I've been pursuing foreclosure on, it was kind of abandoned, it's been in tax title. We have a check that I'm going to pick up tomorrow morning, so that's great. They're paying, well, the check's for about $42,000. Some of that is a reimbursement of legal fees, so about $35,000 is taxes, back taxes and interest that's owed.
So that will clear up the whole back?
So that will, that one property. So
Right.
that will clear up that one property.
That's a win.
But it's good that the money's coming in, because then the money that we've spent on legal fees and such will go into our revolving fund. The only things that can go into our tax title revolving fund are charges and fees and like attorney's fees. So we'll have, about $5,000 we can put into that revolving fund that I can then use to work on another property, because we've only been budgeting about $3,000 a year, which doesn't go very far when you start, going through the process. And the lawyers look at it every month, so you're going to get a bill every month, and, it takes time. PCFs, we were talking about PCFs. I did payroll this pay cycle and noticed that there were three people on the fire department payroll whose pay on their payroll sheet was higher than the PCFs that I have. So I called and asked about that. Two apparently are emergency, he puts them through as an emergency, even though it's just a 50-cent increase. And I don't have that yet. So it's with the PPP board. And then there's another one that went from $10 an hour to $15 an hour that he said he put through, but the PPPB has no record of it. And
I believe we have all three of those, right? Because they were at the Finance Committee last night?
So the 50-cent increases have been given to Heather. I
Right.
think there were two individuals.
right.
Right.
And then there was one that went from 10 to 15.
Yeah, remember, was that the extra duties or was that the 50 cent? one?
Art said he didn't have that one.
Okay,
The 50 cent was for the extra duties. I think it
okay,
was
okay.
quality control, like
Right.
listed on there, for some of the medical side of the service. So we had the two 50 cents. I don't recall seeing it 10 to 15.
No, and Art said he didn't have it, so he's going to resubmit it. It's just frustrating because I'm really trying to make sure that people are paid accurately. And so it seems like that's the only department that puts through an emergency PCF or any kind of pay raise, and then, but by the time I get, I get it. And I'm just concerned, I guess, in the whole process, and don't want the auditors finding fault, and I don't want to pay someone for something that hasn't gone through yet, but then again, he feels that it should be retroactive, so then who's going to handle the retroactive if that's how but that's not how everyone else's PCF is being done, and so I just think that maybe it's something that needs to be addressed at some point.
We talked about it last night at the Finance Committee, and the chief does put everyone through with an emergency. And these, as we were talking about, they weren't emergencies, it's just routine, increases based on another duty they're taking over. So it sounds like it's just complicating the paperwork more. So I wish Jim was here, he's a liaison, but we need to talk to the chief on that.
Yeah.
And we've talked to him before, but I think he feels it's a way to get it through. But you're right, if it's, how do you pay
It's a
him?
way to get it through as of that date, I guess, by making it the emergency. But
Well-
I think that for any other department, that's not how it's handled. And usually, if it's a newer employee, he has all the new hire information. So a lot of times, I get that weeks before they're ever on payroll. So why would there need to be an emergency PCF?
Yeah, the emergency PCF was only if he needed somebody on staff right away to cover the ambulance or fire, but it's not for employees that are already here. So
Yeah.
we need to talk to him on that.
Yeah.
Give it to Jim.
Yep. Heather, can you make a note and we'll relay that information to Jim? Thanks.
Was there anything else on my list, Heather, when we talked earlier?
Jackie also.
You were going to mention about the payroll sheet, that you're working on that, and then that transitions into their next piece, if you wanted to just ask them while you're
Yeah,
here.
the payroll, that's right. The payroll sheet effective for July 1, that lists every employee minus the school, every employee, what their pay rate is, and their benefit, vacation, personal, sick time, if they get any. So that the select board can approve that, so that's what we have as a base for going forward, so the auditors can look at that. And then if any pay rates change during the year, there's a PCF to go with that. But because everyone got the 2% increase, so that's going to track that 2% increase and what their prior rate was and what their rate was as of July 1. And so anyway, I have all that together, except for some confusion on the newly accepted personnel vacation policy and the interpretation of it, which Art and PPPB is working on. I addressed my concerns to them, and so they said they talked about it and they're going to look more at it. But I need to know also, because you guys voted on it in August, had I had this done as of July 1, then it would have been what was in effect then. So is the new personnel bylaw, as far as vacation time, going back to July 1? So, or is it just, I don't know, is it just going forward? Do I use what was already in place as of July 1? Do I?
Do you understand what she's referring
Yeah,
to?
whether it's retro
Jackie,
to July 1 or not.
Right.
Yeah.
So the real question in front of this board is, when we voted that in August, were we thinking July 1st of last July, or were we thinking a year ahead?
Last July, you mean a couple months ago?
Yeah.
I want
It's like
to, I want to
6
see what
weeks
the
after.
vote was. That's what I was going to ask, so we have our memory jogged.
Well, I do recall that it was to go into effect immediately. The
Right.
question is, though, on the benefit side, did you mean for the benefits for vacation and stuff, the policy to vest as of July 1st? Or move it the year? You didn't specify in the vote on the vacation thing. You simply said that this was going into effect immediately.
And what
'Cause
date?
that was pressed.
What date was that?
That was on August, give or take 18th.
Okay, so I guess we've got a question here.
Yeah, I mean,
So one of the changes is that now, according to what Art tells me the intent was, and this is what they need to clarify, once a person has passed their 90-day probationary period, then they can begin to accrue, I believe it's 0.83 days or whatever, for vacation time, per month, okay? So if you had someone that was hired on April 1st of 2016, by July 1st, their 90 days would be up, and they'd get a full week's vacation, because that .83 multiplied out would be for the rest of that year. So I have 2 employees that were hired in June. So they would have to wait till their 90-day period was up in September, and then they can start accruing .83, whatever, and use it in this fiscal year.
that it's to be used, the old vacation policy, you get nothing until you've
Right.
been there a full year.
Right.
So if you had someone that started on July 15th,
Yep.
the following July 1st, they would not have been here for a year, so technically they have to wait a whole nother year to get vacation time.
Which isn't fair. Yeah.
So also what was removed was the payout, like that you're accruing, and then you're owed that for the next year, and blah, blah, blah. So I just need clarification on how,
So is the
if you have somebody that's been here for 5 years, then it's not going to affect what gets put in. But for the people that have been here for 1 year, 2 years, it does affect how the calculation is. And there's one individual who actually loses a week of vacation because the department head extra week is taken away. And that person is in between, I think, the 4 and 5 years. And so next year, he'd get the extra week, but so he'd get a week less this year than he did last year unless there was, it was agreed that he wouldn't be docked that because I think he's the only employee.
So I guess my question, if I can, if we said it's effective, say, April 5th, or August 15th, whatever August date that is, versus July 1, which one would overall benefit the employees more? Can you make that call, or it's just depending on who you are?
I think overall it would benefit everyone except for that one person that would lose a week.
By saying what, August versus July?
No, by saying July.
Okay.
That person, as far as I can tell, is going to lose it any way you slice it,
Yeah.
unless
So-
we go to next year.
Yeah, so if it's going to benefit the majority of staff, which, 'cause I don't like to go back and take something, I would go with the July 1 date.
That was my impression when I voted, that was, everything was
So,
starting then.
so I'll make a motion,
So if when I actually go in and start adding these in, if what I said is not correct and there's going to be, it would be detrimental to more than one, then I will.
the treasurer's
know.
office is down there.
I just want to make sure that I'm doing what you guys intended for this policy and that I'm being fair to everyone. And so that's, I'm just looking for guidance.
In
And
my
that's
mind, I
all.
was going back to July 1, but if we didn't vote on it, we need to make it.
I think you need to make a motion
I
to make
was-
this effective July 1.
So I'll make a motion, we make it effective July 1st, 2016.
And I'll second, it's for discussion.
Okay.
I do want to make sure that that employee that's losing that week is compensated.
That employee, we're presently looking at issues of contract, and
No. Excuse me, but the person I'm referring to is not covered by a contract.
I know that.
Oh.
We're looking to establish a statute
Oh,
or
okay.
a
Oh, okay.
situation where we can give a contract to him.
Okay,
I've talked to DOR about this.
okay,
We are looking at it. I'm fully aware who this individual is.
okay.
Yeah, and
We didn't have a conversation about this, so I didn't know.
No, we don't talk. I mean that in a smiling face way. It's just, But anyways, you got a motion on the table,
In a second?
in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3 of us.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Are there any other questions? Or-
No, but I know about this individual,
Okay.
and I personally have been trying to, and you can even ask Heather about it privately, and she'll explain to you some of the stuff that's going on.
Okay,
I don't think it's fair to that individual.
right.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Donna, before you leave,
Thought you could.
well, that pertaining to that topic, but because Vicki and you are both here, I want to jump on the agenda to vote to authorize one member to sign warrants. I think that new law that's coming in effective November 7th, which allows the board to designate board members to sign rather than having a quorum to sign, it would be very helpful for all of us so that we can keep bills and payroll going. You both see that information. Do I need to read it to everyone?
No?
In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 56, the Modernization Act. It would allow the select board to designate a select board member or two to take and sign bill warrants and payroll warrants.
In my mind, and I see what's here, but I would recommend in general that the chair be able to sign them, and if the chair's not here, then the vice chair. We've done that with something else, rather than name a designated person.
Yeah, that's how we normally do it.
Yeah. I would,
I don't have a problem with that. I'm
Right.
just pointing out the fact that, you know,
yeah. That way, this carries through no matter who's on the board. That would be my recommendation.
Vicki wants to say something.
I guess so, Vicki Morrow, Town Accountant, Pomeroy Meadow Road. I'm not opposed to that. The other half of that is you have to come back to the next meeting with a report to the rest of the board. That's the other part of that. You can't just sign it. The next day, the next meeting, you have to come back with a report to the rest of the board. So that's part of that. The other piece is, we have a few members on the board who can't sign warrants, certain parts of the warrant,
Right.
for payroll or for expenses. So that's going to be tricky. I guess I just wanted to bring that up. Like, that's
Okay,
a
so
little
it's-
bit tricky.
That's not you.
It is me.
It is
On
on
one
one small
Okay,
piece.
yeah, it's
It
not-
is
Real
Jim
small.
on something.
It's not me
It
on
is on
anything.
you on something,
Right, yeah.
so,
So, yeah, the ones you can't sign that portion, I guess I can sign.
Right, and that's not going to happen all the
Often.
time. It's
Right.
just-
no, you know, it's not every payroll that,
Yeah.
you know, Tom gets paid for plumbing. Obviously Janine is on every payroll with Jim.
Right.
You know, but expenses come up, you know, there's not always town clerk expenses all the time, but there is once in a while. You know, whatever those conflicts are with all of you, that's just something to be aware of when you say, oh, well, this person's going to sign, because they really can't sign for everything if
Right.
there's a conflict in that particular
Okay.
week.
So if,
The vice chair now. So, John, you can sign anything.
right,
Pretty much.
I mean, I don't think he's ever
I-
been accepted from any.
No,
I have,
No.
I have no conflicts.
no.
And Charlie can pretty much sign everything
Except for that one.
occasionally a vendor bill warrant.
Correct,
That might have.
Right, and that doesn't
there might be
happen.
conflict.
correct.
It's not every time.
It's not every time, but I guess I wanted you just to kind of keep that in mind.
So in that case, there might be occasional times when
He can't sign it.
either,
He can't sign, but you can sign them.
Yeah.
or you can sign and then have a separate signature.
Yeah, I
Right.
just signed
You know,
everything except
or-
that one.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and then you'd have to sign for that one. But I just wanted to,
Yeah,
you know, we have a few things here and there, and just made you aware that you can't just have one
What
person
we're
sign
also looking
everything.
at right now, every time we need to pay these, we have to get basically quorum to set this up to sign it. And this way here, I'm in town a lot, so it's easy for me
Mm-hmm.
to follow up on it.
I don't disagree with it, I'm just saying there's
No,
few
no,
things that
no.
kind of fall into that's not just,
yeah. And it does say here, you have to report
you
back to
have
the
to
select
report,
board,
yes.
so that's
When we went
here.
on Thursday, they made that very clear.
That would
And
make
my
sense.
assumption will be that that will be a template that'll be eventually just drafted, and we'll just plug in the numbers to report to the board.
The bill, the warrant number and the amount.
Yeah, yeah, because that's all the report is. It's not going to stand there and say, I
And then
paid.
that just gets entered into the minutes.
Yeah. Your motion?
I'll make a motion, we authorize the chair or the vice chair in his absence or inability to sign the bill and the payroll warrants, with the caveat, they have to bring it back to the next select board meeting with the amount, concerns, et cetera, on each.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Done deal, unanimous. Okay, thank you, ladies. Now we're going
One more time, Donna.
to, oh, Donna?
No, run.
And now you wonder why she doesn't talk to me. All right, new business. I have a question under new business. This board is accepting Heather's resignation.
No. Doesn't matter, doesn't matter.
For November 25th?
That's the last day in the books, yes.
Right.
But what's
okay.
your actual last day?
November 10th-ish.
Okay.
Does the board wish to accept this resignation and notify Personnel Board by form.
I'll make a motion, we regrettably accept her resignation.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. And Heather, I guess we're instructing you to put together a personnel form?
It's already on, you already have it there, Charlie. It's down a little bit further when we get to
Oh, okay, good.
PCFs.
I would-
Or at least I have it on there for you guys to vote to do so. I think I gave you the hard copy last week.
All right.
I would like to officially, I don't know what the venue would be, have an exit interview.
That would be very good. I like that.
And I don't know if we need to do that in executive session, out in open, or one-on-one. What's is there a proper way, Heather? No? Okay.
I think it's totally up to the board. It probably doesn't really go into executive session because it's not a contract negotiation.
Okay.
So I would say either open session or one-on-one piece. That would be generally how it's done.
So you want to plan on that for the beginning of November?
Yep, if you can put it on the schedule, sure.
Does that work for you, Heather?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Now, next thing is Town Administrator job opening, Search Committee charge formation. Discussion.
Well, I think we need to have a screening committee for sure.
So then the question is the screening committee the Board of Selectmen, or are we appointing a screening committee?
I personally, just from experience, I would say we appoint one, and we, all but maybe one of us, even if we want one of us on the screening committee, we back away and get the recommendations from the screening committee. Jackie, you've been involved at least one?
That's a great idea.
Okay. So the question is going to be, are we making a motion to establish a screening committee?
I'll make the motion, we establish a town administrator screening committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Want to talk about it, or?
Well, I think we first got to say that we're going to have the screening committee, now we got to set up the charge of that committee.
Okay, so, aye.
Okay,
Aye.
all in
Yep.
favor. Now, the next question is going to be what the charge of that committee is going to be, and should we post to obtain applicants?
I did attach, I believe you have a sample draft charge in your packet. In that section.
I think, this is just me thinking out loud, which sometimes gets me in trouble, but I think we should put a screening committee together, have them meet with us, and give them a charge at an open meeting, and that way they'll be able to ask questions too. And when they leave, it'll all be out in the open, and everybody will know what's going on.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. So I guess the only question is going to be how large of a committee we're looking at.
And how diverse, which is important.
Did you
Well,
take 5 people?
Well, you're going to want some representatives of the town hall.
Yeah.
Um,
So again, wondering out loud, can we have a core committee, 5 or whatever number we pick, then have ad hoc members join portions that are pertinent? Because I think there's people in the town that want to voice their opinion or their thoughts on what they think is good for a town administrator, but may not have the time or want to sit on the total committee for the whole process.
Question. Do either one of you want to take and be the lead for the Board of Selectmen to this committee? My plate's full, so I'm sort of like,
I know.
So just, if I may, because I've had a little experience with screening committees throughout the state at this point. I'm not even kidding, I'm so done interviewing. So one thing to keep in mind is, I've been through many of these as an applicant, so I can tell you feedback on that side. And I've been through screening committees that have generally been 6 people to 10 people, so they're getting larger these days. One thing that's been pretty consistent, no select board members on the committee. The reason being is you have the screening committee first, and then they recommend to the select board, all members are getting the information at the same time, so it's not like they're already biased on what they've seen before, or heaven forbid, they missed one of the prior meetings, and therefore they didn't see an applicant is the same approach as they've seen everyone else, but it seems to have gone well.
I think, going with what Heather says or not, the chair of it has to be a strong, knowledgeable person, because that person's going to lead this whole charge, and it comes out good or bad. So whoever we select, and I don't mind Heather's suggestion at all.
Hi.
Hi.
So, funny thing is that the town of Deerfield is looking for a new town administrator, and I'm very friendly with the accountant. And what they did up there, and they're still in that process, is they had a screening committee of, 5 different people who went through all the resumes, picked the people to be interviewed. Then they had an ad hoc, like they added people to do the interviewing. So you had that original, 3 people to go through the resumes, look at, whatever qualifications they wanted. Then they had people from the town hall, one happens to be the accountant, to be in on that interview, so they could have other people added to that, interview process, and then they were going to bring them to the select board at the end. But just a suggestion, because that's what I've heard recently, so.
Were you going to say something?
No.
Okay.
So-
I mean, following up, and obviously, some of the information we have here, but to get the committee going, do we hire a consultant? I mean, I'm very familiar with hiring search firms and executive search firms for high-level positions, but they normally charge 33 to 35%, plus an administrative fee for all the back office stuff, which can be 5, 6, 7,000 just for that, plus expenses. So if you're talking for somebody, whatever, say $100,000, you're already up to $40,000 you're going to pay a executive search firm. So obviously we can't do that. But a consultant, and we have one of them that gave us a proposal, and I'm not saying necessarily use this person, but we're in the $5,000 range.
Doesn't the Collins Center do it for free?
And maybe, or, the Donahue Institute, I don't know if they would do it, yeah.
I just,
Yeah,
no, I'm sure. The Collins Center doesn't do it for free. None of them do it.
yeah. But I mean, if we can get a consultant or a search consultant for a reasonable amount of money who has experience in this, that could help us put the ads together, get all the resumes in, cull through them after we let the person know what we need, and then forward, the top, I don't know, say that we're going to get a lot of them, top 10 to the search committee, then they can go through those and cull them down and decide which 3, 4, 5 they want to interview. And I think that's similar to what we had in this proposal, but again, I'm not promoting that particular person.
The problem is we have no budget to hire a consultant.
Right, I mean, did Deerfield have?
Well, after the town meeting, we will, hopefully.
They had they have a consultant, but she happens to be was their previous town administrator. They're paying her, I forget what Brenda told me, but they are paying her to kind of go through that process. But she was already the town administrator there, and she had left, and they asked her to come back to help them out. So that's kind of what they did.
If I can
Or
ask-
what they're doing now, because they're kind of in that process, so.
Just a question, Mike, more towards you. Is there, what amounts in the reserve fund?
Yeah,
$10,000.
$10,000, nothing
I
has
mean,
been.
I mean, if there's ever a reason to spend, say, $5,000, it's to get a highly qualified person to manage the town. I mean, from an individual on the finance committee, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's an option. I would ask the question, so hypothetically, not hypothetically, but Heather will be gone November 10th, right?
Well,
So-
28th off the payroll,
Right, but physically,
right.
not present, not working the 10th. I mean, maybe she'll come in and work, but, so I'm assuming we're gonna look at some interim town administrator, probably at a discount, less hours, same rate, less hours, more rate, I'm not sure, but can you budget the interim town administrator so that funds will be left available in that line at the end of the year to pay for the consulting?
Can we take consultant out of the wage line? No, I think, yeah.
You could do a line item transfer later on.
Correct. that's
Okay,
what I mean.
afterwards, yeah.
Transferring it
Okay.
at the end of the year.
So let me,
Or in January.
Yeah.
or in January.
Let me go on that. So if it happens that we're going to need some money at the end of the year, we just have to worry about it transferring from another line somewhere.
But the only problem on that, John, just keep in mind, to clarify what Vicky was saying, is the consultant piece would be an expense. So you can't pull an expense out of the salary line for the town administrator.
Right.
If you weren't looking to expend the expense until January or May, you could do a line item transfer before
Right.
then. But that's why there's an article in the special town meeting for the $5,000 for a consultant, Mike, is for this purpose, and anticipating that this was coming. That's why it was written on there, just in case they needed it.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get ahead of it, because if it doesn't get approved at town meeting, what's our other avenue? So we got a couple avenues anyway, but I think it'd be money well spent.
So I mean, I guess procedurally, is it an option if you hire a town administrator, interim, who at the end of their term leaves $5,000 left in that account, there is a way to transfer that?
In January
In
town
January.
meeting, if say there's 40 grand left in that salary line item, and you're gonna pay this person 30, in January, you can put an article on to transfer to a consultant line out of that wage line.
Okay, so how do we hire a consultant now? Assuming we don't get the money at town meeting, how do we hire a consultant now and pay that person before January?
If you don't have enough money in the administrative expenses left, then your only option is going to be to go to the FinCom and see if they would allow you to do a reserve. You can't run a balance negative where you don't have the funds appropriated.
But we can reimburse the reserve fund.
Yes, you
January.
can, but the problem is, as we've seen in the past, is the town meeting has not approved it. So although the answer is yes, you legally can, will you get the support to do so is the question.
So
To
we need,
reimburse our reserve fund
We tried that last year.
with the,
With the Sharps program, and we got the money back.
correct, we got the money back.
but
But
again,
if the town meeting says no,
yeah,
then
her point is, it all has to go through town meeting.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, at the end of the day, the reserve fund is for the emergency unforeseens, and if,
Yeah.
if the decision is to put a request in to transfer to create a temporary consultant line to pay for this, then it's,
Yeah.
I mean, your decision, right, to put that forward.
And
so.
we have to push it at the town meeting and explain it, so. So the question is, do we want to do that, I guess, now?
It's easier to do it at town meeting than it's try playing all these
But-
moving around.
I mean, that's just, I think it's a good idea. I don't know what you two think.
So the first question I have on the table is how many members of the screening committee you want? I like Vicky's comment about the fact of, thanks, Mike, I didn't mean to, I want to keep this rolling. I like Vicky's idea of have 3 people, let them get the applications and stuff, but I don't know how you guys feel about it.
My only fear with such a small number is, depending on if 2 of them are going left, just because they want to go left and haven't been on these type of committees, you can see people, I mean, look at politics now, I mean, we got one over here and one over here, and
No,
we
they're
need
not.
somebody right down the middle that's going to look all over. So, I mean, to me, 5 would be good, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think 5 is even good number.
I just wanted to interject, so if the board's looking to do a consultant, one of the services that the consultant often will provide, including in the proposal you have before you, is that they actually will take care of getting everything advertised, pull in the applicants, and then they'll actually weed them down, doing that 3-person job, they'll weed them down to who's actually qualified, because this is what they do. At that point, they give whatever number is requested by the screening committee. So say they say, we want to see 10 applicants, and we only want to see 10 applicants, no more than that, and we will weed them down somewhere between the top, 5 to 7 that we want to interview, and then from there, only the qualified ones to submit to the board.
Yep. Yeah, that'll take a lot of the work away.
I understand that. The problem is we're October 4th, we're looking at town meeting October 18th. So we have 2 weeks here that we would be sitting idle if we want to put a screening.
Why are we sitting idle? We're looking at for the flow of the money, and if we don't get it, we're going to get the money elsewhere. I think it's our decision. If we want to go ahead with it, then we start the process.
Well, then if we're going to go ahead, are we looking to go ahead with hiring a consultant?
Again, that's my opinion. It's up to you two.
Yeah, I think if it's reasonable, I don't want to overspend. I mean, 5,000, we should put it at that amount and no more.
Then if you're going to go in that direction, you got to withdraw your motion to establish a committee.
No, because we still need a committee that the consultant will hand, like I said, the top
Yes.
X down to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right.
So we can do these in tandem, I think.
So let's do this, just to keep it consistent. We're on the committee right now. Do you want to make another motion that the committee will be 5 people?
I'll make a motion that the search committee be comprised of 5 individuals.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that carries. And basically, what we'll do now is just post that the committee is open and to get applicants to the select board? Does that work?
In general, yes, but we just can't take 5 people. We've got to, like I said, have some experience in
Well,
round.
they're going to apply to us that they want to be on the committee. They should give us some background of
Yeah.
what their experiences is to do this.
We have applications.
And then what we'll do is set up their charge after we get our consultant on board.
Yep. And I know, without naming names, we have a few people that are on various committees that have good HR background, that hopefully, if you're out there, you'll apply for the committee.
So do I hear a motion now to move to hire a consultant?
I'll make a motion that we look at hiring a search consultant to the point where we'll get some estimates of the cost, and if it's within the roughly $5,000 range, we'll go ahead and select one.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the third question is, do you wish to,
Can you just clarify that one more time, John? So you're making a motion to?
Motion to research the availability of a search consultant and get pricing, and if it's within the estimate of roughly $5,000, we'll go forward and hire the best one.
we're looking
Okay,
for
you-
applicants.
You do have one already, and that's
Right.
the one that you guys are currently working on, the government structure and charter?
I'm just making a motion separate from anybody. And I fully understand that, and that may be where we go, but I think we need to leave it open.
Okay, when you say you want me to, I guess you're going to have to be a little more definitive here on how much time you would like me to invest in researching a consultant to do this?
I think if you go to a couple of the towns, I know in this particular one, he was involved with the town of Amherst, which is a good reference, and if you can check it or I can check it, and if we have a couple of the towns that just recently hired, maybe you know through your process whether they use consultants. I don't want you to do a huge search, but
Yeah. That makes sense to you?
Okay,
That wasn't a question.
that's the best I can do at the moment.
Charlie, I'm willing to take it.
That's all I'm getting out of this. Huh? All right, the third thing is the interim town administrator. We have here a note of 2 individuals. I think we should move forward and ask these 2 individuals to come in so we can discuss this with them to see if there's a feasibility of appointing them emergency so that they can take over when Heather leaves in November.
Do we know where these folks were? The names are
I know
familiar.
one of them very well.
So you have,
Where, who and where?
Deerfield, everything from Superior Court hearings to town actions.
Okay. And where did these 2 names come from?
Heather actually provided them. I
So can you give a little background?
sure, you have 2 names before you. I'm going to do their first names, and if you can read the last name, because I don't know if it's in front of me here. Oh, yes, it is. All right, so there's 2. The first one is Bob Markell. Hank Barton actually stopped by. He has known Bob for a while. Bob was, once upon a time, actually the mayor in Springfield. You have his resume attached in your packet with all of the locations where he has recently served as interim. One of the benefits of having someone come in who served as interim is they know the job. They know that they're essentially, keeping things moving and keeping everything moving forward while there's a search going on. And generally speaking, a lot of times you put a provision in their contract when you contract with them that says something along the lines of they're not eligible to apply for the full position, is usually where you go with that. If you give me 1 second, I'll pull up the sheet for him so I can give you a little more information.
No, I just saw it.
So Bob, for instance, has been the interim in Stoneham, Templeton, Northfield. Previous to that, he was actually the town manager in the town of Kittery, Ipswich, Norfolk, and had other previous backgrounds. He was the mayor in Springfield from 92 to 96, and he was a city councilor there before that. So he has a lot of municipal experience and background. The other individual has not sent me his resume and the like yet, but that's the one Charlie was talking about. That is a gentleman named Bernie Kubiak. Is that how you say his last name? And he has also been around. Both of these would
Yeah.
be either able to live locally or reside in a local location, so they'd be close to town to do so. General way they do this is they generally do about 20 hours a week, and you provide them with a cell phone, and they stay in touch with the town when they're not here that way.
And I happen to know that Bernie's actually working with Hampshire County Council of Governments as a grant writer, or at least
Okay.
he was.
Our next select board meeting is 3 weeks from now, right?
That's one of the reasons we're pushing this now.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having a special meeting to bring them in before then, just so we could get somebody going. And if that person can spend a little time with Heather before she leaves, I think that would be advantageous. Yes?
So you're thinking next week?
You can think next week, but I'm not here. I mean, I don't have to be here to interview
Well,
them.
I want to try to get as much of the board members here as I can.
Okay.
Well, the following week is the 18th, that's town meeting, and then the 20th, we got a select board meeting.
Well, gosh, there's 3 other days in that week now.
Yeah, well, this is what we seem to do.
Kidding.
I've been noticing that I'm doing meetings, like,
So-
one week is 3-4 days, and the following week is one, and it's like, geez.
So we have a town meeting, 6 o'clock. Board of Selectmen, 6 o'clock, town meeting after that, right? On the 18th?
Yeah,
Well, I think we were talking about not doing a select board meeting on the 18th, since you guys are meeting on the 20th, because it's town meeting.
What time does it start, town meeting?
Starts at 7, which usually means I'm running frantically back and forth from the library to the cafeteria to get everything running. So it's up to the board, but
Do we need Heather here for
No.
that?
we don't need Heather to talk to these two individuals.
oh, is that when you'd like to meet with them before town meeting?
Yeah, I was
Six.
just thinking if we could get one of them there for 5:30 and get the other one there for 6:15, something like that.
My only feedback piece would be that I don't know, I think the residents would probably like it better if that was something that was on TV, because they're going to want to see who's,
Yeah, that's a good
I
point.
think you're going to get a lot of negative feedback if you do that.
Yeah, we don't want that. So the 20th, we've got a 6 o'clock, is it?
Yep,
And then we've got a regular select board meeting after that? Yeah. No, we don't have anything scheduled after that on the 20th, do we? Just the,
Charlie was talking yesterday about doing a regular before the specials, before the executives on the 20th,
Yeah.
since you guys are already coming.
because we missed the 18th,
so start at what time? 6?
6.
Okay,
But we'll do our business.
first, and then we'll do the
We'll do
executive.
executive sessions
Okay.
later.
So do we want to have those folks come in then, or is that going to take up the time that you wanted for the regular meeting?
I don't know what's going to be sitting on our plate. I mean, can you start at 5:30?
Oh, I am moving my offices that day before. So let me see, 5:30. Yeah, I probably can be here for 5:30,
So you want to start the discussion with one of them at 5:30?
and then quarter after 6?
Yeah, I'm just thinking a half-hour discussion, that's
Yeah. Where are they coming from again?
One lives local, the other one I think is regularly out of Boston, but he would stay locally, so I'm sure they can. I'll touch base and make sure they can
Okay.
make
All
it.
right, so let's aim for that, Heather. Okay? Because we got to get this moving. That work for you, Jackie? All right. I don't think we need a motion for that. Do you? I mean, you know. All right. Anything else on this topic that I missed? Heather? Okay, so we're going to be asking for a screening committee, so there's a form on the web that people can fill out with their background and everything else, and that can get submitted to us for review. We're going to look at an interim town administrator. I'm going to talk to two individuals that are known well and respected in the area, and we're going to look at hiring a consultant to help with the process with the screening committee. Sounds like we got a plan. Okay, next one, Peak Demand Management Grant Program. Can you fill us in on that one? I
The
can't,
one you asked me to put on there, Charlie.
jog my memory.
There's a couple of sheets of paper in your
Attachment
packet.
E.
That's as much information as I know on it.
Boy, I'll tell you, there's just too many things flying past me.
It's something that came from Hampshire Council of Governments, I believe.
Oh, yes, that was, if I remember right, let me look at it just to make sure. Oh, it's an opportunity to discuss sharing energy costs with them. I think we should table this for now, but if you notice, it's basically their programs. I just want the board to be aware of it. I wasn't looking for any action. Okay? So. All right. Signature appointments. Okay. Conservation Commission, Brittany Gutterman, is it pronounced? Conservation Commission, Luce Dalton, Cultural Council, Karen Adamski, Cultural Council. It's William Barkham, Public Safety Complex, and Ron Lauren, Driveway Regulation Ad Hoc Committee. He's also the tree warden, and tree warden gets involved in the driveways all the time. Do I hear a motion to appoint these individuals?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So be it. Personnel changes.
Jackie.
Here she goes throwing paper at me again.
You know you're going to miss that.
I know, I'm going to miss that. Oh, well. Okay, personnel changes. Richard Lundstrom, Quality Assurance Reviewer Duties position. That's Fire Department, I believe.
Right.
Brian Morris, Quality Assurance Reviewer Duties. Timothy Rowan, Probationary Firefighter. Michael
Fair.
EMT Firefighter. Jordan Duchette, Probate Firefighter. And Heather, Town Administrator, resignation. See a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion, we accept them as written.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Personnel request form, well, here's where I jumped ahead, huh? Town Administrator, our BFR, if board wishes to go direction of consultant, so on and so forth, well, we've already done all this, haven't we?
Yes,
Yep.
we have.
So we pass over this. Licenses. Application by library trustees for a one-day wine and malt only liquor license for the library on November 2nd from 5:30 to 7:30 for the 20th anniversary of the library building. Hard to believe that's 20 years ago. And the other one is application by Devon and David Denouche for a one-day all-alcohol license for Conant Park on October 15th from 10 to 6 for a fundraiser for prostate cancer. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. We have no payroll or bill warrants?
We do.
Okay, Jackie, they're in your corner.
The numbers are right on top if you want to read it.
Thank you. Move payroll warrant 17-14, $250,038.53. I move warrant 17-12A, $270. PD 17-12, $43,964.69. And PD 17-12-8, $152,177.20.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? So moved. Okay. We have no minutes, Heather?
We do have the minutes, but with Jim not being here and him having my minutes hostage.
Yes, Jim likes to review those. Okay.
They're down in, what is it, Hurricane Matthew?
Yes, yes.
So who knows if we'll ever get them back.
I just hope he doesn't go on deck and start reading them. Okay, calendar and announcement, Board of Selectmen's meeting. The next Board of Selectmen's meeting is scheduled for the 20th of September. And special, well, you got October 20th is the special for the fire chief's negotiation also. And special town meeting is October 18th. We're not having a Selectmen's meeting before that?
It's up to the board. I mean, if
May I
you want to.
May I suggest we post it in case something occurs?
Well, we can post it, and that way, if you guys, you feel you need to meet before you
Yeah,
can.
I mean, you know what's happening right now has been the permits for liquor licenses for parties and stuff seems to be just thrown up in front of us 2 days in advance. So let's just post it in case somebody has an issue.
Aye, aye.
That work?
Good idea.
Okay. Okay, executive session. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, under item number 3, and we will not be returning to open session. I need a roll call vote.
Sears, aye.
Konecki, aye?
Martin, aye.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.